Hey, what's up everybody? It's Andre with AndreReeseDotBiz. All right guys, we're out here on another cyclecast out here in Richmond, Virginia, out here in these bicycle streets. So I got a number of different topics to talk about today with you guys. I'm going to talk about the main topic I'm going to talk about is something I say all the time. I am the best of what was left. So I'm going to talk about that concept, and hopefully you'll be able to get some useful information out of the concept. I'm also going to talk about the movie, The Goat, that just came out. Went and checked that out. I'm going to talk about my tipping policy, and we've done a lot of traveling over the last couple years or so internationally. So I'm going to talk to you. People ask me all the time, when you're overseas and traveling in Europe and stuff, do you experience racism? So I'm gonna go ahead and talk about that also as well. So let's go ahead and jump into it and get started. Man, I'm telling you, with this fake summer out here in RVA is in full effect. Man, today I think it's got up to 89 degrees, and probably right now it's probably about 87 or so, and very, 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 very windy, all good. And so when I say fake summer, that means that you think it's summer, but then next week I think we're going to be down in the 30s and 40s for a few days, and then that will be the end of winter's last grip on us, and then we'll start to transition into the spring, summer season. So it happens every year, and it's not time yet to put away your winter clothes, because you won't know for sure until we've had several weeks of warm air. And I'm very happy and very thankful for that, to be able to get out here in the evening right now before the pollen season comes and before the the bugs and stuff really start hitting. I gotta bug spray up before I get on the bike. So appreciating every moment of this for sure. And so let's talk about that. And then other just miscellaneous stuff. Man, I'm telling you, this hardtail bike that I have, meaning that it has no suspension on the front or the back. I mean, specifically hardtail means the back with no suspension. This bike has no suspension in the front either. So I don't know if it's a hard front. I don't know what the the street term or for the bicycle community is to talk about that a bike that has no suspension. Probably hardtail all around seems pretty reasonable to say. But the one I have normally, my Moto Bay, it has suspension in the front and the back. So you guys don't normally see a lot of bouncing around and stuff that takes place unless I'm hitting some really, really rough ground. And here I found that pretty much almost any bump that, like this one, see, that I hit, the camera just, even though it's a gimbal, it still takes quite a bit of shock till it stabilizes itself. So I've noticed it on some of the other videos. So now what I'm doing is I'm only starting to record in the part where things are, I'm not riding on the cobblestones and stuff like that. So, and if I do that and stay on the relatively smooth road, I'm not going to have too much problems at all. So that's all good, and all part of getting used to using this bike in the meantime until I'm get my other bike back. All good. Brother is not complaining. And I'll tell you, I've had two minor camera disasters with this bike. So with me seeing, actually yesterday I went out and rode, and it was the first day since I've been riding for the last several months that I didn't actually end up doing a cyclecast. And the reason why is because it looked like my mount was bouncing, and I went and touched it, and I disengaged the camera and it fell off, and I was lucky enough that it hit the ground and there was no issues or problem, nothing got hurt. But I didn't realize it at the time until I had rode off, and my SD card that I had inside dislodged. So I went back and spent like 10 minutes trying to see if I can locate it. The thing is so small and tiny, I couldn't find it. Another guy was walking by, he was like, hey, did you lose something? And I was like, yeah, my SD card somewhere. and he spent a couple minutes looking with me, and he couldn't spot it either. So, you know, just had to charge that one off to the game. So I went ahead and bought another SD card. So at least I know now if I ever drop my camera, I got to make sure that the SD card is in it. And when I was hit a real big bump earlier today, I didn't have my camera on here lodged on, you know, really good. So what ended up happening was it popped off, but I tethered it to my my mount, and so all it did was just kind of swing in the wind, you know. So brother, you know, averted, you know, a near disaster, which I'm really happy and thankful for. So yeah, so that's kind of what's happening, what's going on. So a couple things to talk about and discuss, you know, with you guys right now. And I'm headed out just doing my normal route like I do, and headed down to the river. I know there's going to be a ton of people down there kind of hanging out, walking, doing their thing like they always do. So it makes me proud to see folks out taking advantage of, you know, the warm air and all that. So let's go ahead and jump in and start knocking out these topics today. I think the one I almost talked about, I think I'm gonna save it for tomorrow, was that LA Marathon last second victory. So I'm gonna save my thoughts for that tomorrow. But let's jump into the movie GOAT. So, you know, we love to watch movies, and I tell you, we don't watch as many movies as we do. Like I said, we typically go out on Friday, Saturday, Sunday of each week, no matter where we are in the country or the world, and we always have a date night. You know, that's just what we do. It's sacred. And lately, we haven't gone to the movies that much this year because we've been doing other stuff. There really hasn't been anything that's been playing. And so when we went to the movies last time, we saw a preview for a movie, and Marilyn was like, hey, I want to see that movie. And so sometimes I'll go see, she'll pretty much go, if there's something I want to see, she'll go watch it with me, as long as it's not a horror movie. She can't do horror, but pretty much any other kind of movie, she'll go hang out with me and allow me to watch the movie, and I return the same favor. So there's plenty of things that happen, and I'm a lover of movies anyway. If I had a limited movie pass, I'd pretty much watch almost anything that came out, except for animated movies like I've done before in the past when I had the AMC movie pass. Bumps out here are bumpitous. And so like I said, I will go watch any movie with Marilyn, and she'll go watch any movie with me. So last time we were at the theater, she saw this movie that she wanted to see. And so it was what she thought was the GOAT movie. And I was like, you know, I don't want to see it. I was making fun and playing games and talking about how, you know, it'd been recalled and, you know, all this stuff. And she's like, no, I want to see it. I want to see it. So playing around like we normally do. And we got to the point where, you know, I think it was Monday, and I was telling her about the movies that were playing, and she came over and looked, and she's like, oh, there's a GOAT movie. I want to see it on Friday. And I said, well, it's at 5:05 p.m., which is typically earlier than we normally go see a movie. And so she's like, I'm gonna clear my calendar so we can go. So I went ahead and checked in with her on Thursday and went ahead and bought the tickets for the movie. All good. And so Friday we're supposed to go at 5:05. And yeah, so like I said, I went ahead and got the tickets, and we headed to the theater. And there was a ton of, so it's an animated movie. It's about basketball and all that whole thing. And you know, and I've noticed whenever they have like a kids movie or animated movie, they've always got like a ton of previews, hell of them. So it's like, yeah, okay, cool, whatever. And so we're watching preview after preview after preview of all these, you know, animated movies that are coming, or kid-friendly movies. And then all of a sudden there's this movie that comes up that is got a sheep in it. And Marilyn looks at me, and then she looks at the screen, and she says, hey, why are they playing a preview for the movie we're about to watch? I was like, we're not watching that movie. She says, that's the movie I want to watch. And I was like, no, we're watching the GOAT movie. So it was funny. She got she saw animals and got the goats and, got the goats and the sheeps confused. So it was just so funny to see the look on her face as she realized that we were there to watch a different movie. And so we ended up watching the GOAT movie, and to be honest with you guys, it was pretty good. At first I thought it was kind of a rip-off of basketball culture and FBA culture in the US, but we always stay and watch the previews, and I didn't realize it was a Stephen Curry movie, and a number of different people were the part of the cast, and we're looking at people that were voicing the voices and stuff, and I even saw on there, is it Angela or Angel? Reese. She's in the WNBA. I forget which one she is, but Marilyn was like, isn't that your people up there? So I think I am related to her, because I have some friends, not friends, I have family that are Reese's that also have her as has a friend on Facebook. So I've never looked above and beyond that, but I think that's what the case is. So it was kind of cool to see all the folks. And like I said, it was a really good movie, and definitely recommend it. I know the kids would love it, the adults would love it also as well. And it's one of those kind of like, I think you can kind of movies, so I would give it probably 3.5 or 4 stars out of 5. And, it was better than what I expected. And it was a nice surprise at the end to see who was involved in, making the project and all that. So yeah, so that's the movie, The GOAT. And so the moral of the story here is, what you can learn from is sometimes you got to double check and triple check to make sure before you actually, go get involved in something, that that's actually what you want. And I know I've done, the same thing before many times also as well. But I think the look on my wife's face was absolutely priceless when she realized that we were at the wrong movie, so all good. So like I said, go ahead and check it out. You'll probably enjoy the flick for what it is. And so the next, let's jump into tipping. So that's one of the other topics I'm gonna talk about here. So I'll tell you, I should say I used to be conflicted about tipping. And I think I've always tipped, no problem there. But then when you got to the point where COVID came, and I think a lot of people have really complained about tipping and having to tip on almost everything now. And it took me a long time to grow a pair, and I utilized my wife to help me on this one here. But after traveling a lot and seeing what happens in the rest of the world, I've now adjusted how I tip. And so the way it used to be before is that if you went to a restaurant, you sat down, you got some food, the standard, you can debate it up and down however you want to do it. The standard is like 18%. So if somebody takes your order and brings your food and get you some more breadsticks and keeps your drink topped off, that's all worth the service, understood. And I don't think that has changed in any kind of way with me. But once COVID hit, I think a lot of people realized that there's a certain segment of the population that was still working really hard, and they're putting themselves on a line, and nobody knew for certain what was happening. So it got to the point where not so much employees, but ownership and management started putting tips on almost anything that you bought. So if you went to, let's say you went to Starbucks or something and you bought a pastry, you know, before in the past it would be like $6, slide the card, pay for the pastry and the tax. Then it got to the point where, you know, you would you'd be presented with an opportunity to tax because somebody, or tip because somebody put a bagel in a bag. It even spread to fast food places like McDonald's. You go to McDonald's like you normally do, you would order your food, and they'd give you an option to auto tip 20% or choose another amount. And if you want to leave 0, it's kind of on a hidden menu in the back, you know, all good. And so, you know, folks, I think during that time, they felt kind of obligated, and they also felt good at the same time to try to make sure that folks, you know, that were out there on the front lines, you know, were getting compensated for what was going on. And I think over time, what happened was ownership and management, they got to the point where they would utilize the tips, you know, so to speak, to subsidize the employees' earnings, you know, the mandatory tips. That way they didn't necessarily have to pay a higher wage or more of a living wage. They kind of pushed that burden back down onto the customers. And as anything that happens, once something gets implemented and gets put into place, you know, it's very difficult to undo it. So, you know, fast forward a number of years after, you know, COVID had come and gone, and, you know, everything had kind of moved on, the option to really tip on almost anything these days was there. And it migrated amongst all types of industries, all types of businesses, not just hospitality, you know, but anytime that you were going to interface with somebody and they were just going to essentially do their job, they were going to ask for a tip. So the problem I had was it was very difficult for me to turn around and say, hey, you know, I think I was ultimately forced into hundreds of transactions where I tipped because it was an option that was presented to me, and I didn't want to turn around and appear like I was a miser or wasn't being fair. You know, all good. You know, those are the kind of things that happen. And so when I started dating Marilyn, you know, Marilyn is, she is European, so she is French. You know, she was born in Switzerland, and then she grew up in France, you know, and then eventually, after a number of years, you know, of going to university and working, she had an opportunity to come to the States to be able to work over here. And so, you know, that's where her training for tipping comes from. And I'll tell you, she would always tell me, you know, why are you tipping for something that somebody is supposed to do anyway? I'm like, because it says that and all that. And so it got to the point where I was like, I don't want to leave the tips anymore, but I'm scared. And so I would kind of like, whenever the option came up to have a tip, I would have her, I would spin it over to her, and she would press the no tip button, and then I would go ahead and sign, and all good. And I'll tell you, what really changed my mind about this whole thing was when we went to Paris. We went to Paris for, was this back in 2024? This was right after I had relocated out here to Richmond. We immediately went to Paris, and that was my first boots on the ground. It was my first boots on the ground experience in Europe. And I'll tell you, the thing that was very interesting was, you know, like when you go to, and that's pretty much anywhere in America, you go to an American hotel, you know, they're gonna have, you know, or pretty much anytime you interact with customer service representative, they're gonna have a counter that they stand behind, and there's always this major separation between you and between them. You know, all good. That's just the way our stuff is all set up. Perfect, all good. And so when you are in Europe, things are a lot more centered towards, you know, the customer experience. And when we went to our first hotel while we were there, What I experienced was we walked into the hotel, and instead of having a counter, they had they had these individual cashier pods. And so the cashier or the hotel attendant was at a pod. So if they had 5 people, they had 5 separate pods. You know, so you'd walk up to the guy or the girl and you would talk to them. They'd say, you know, bonjour, and, you know, get the information. And so they would go through and get you set up, and then they would explain everything about the room. And then what they did from there is they would take and walk you to the elevator. And they would say their final greetings and, you know, salutations and all that. Then you would take off and go. And so I remember we had came in with at least probably 3 or 4 roll-on bags, you know. And when we first got out the car, a guy came up to us immediately and said, hey, I'll take your suitcases. And I was like, no, it's okay. I got him, because I don't want to give the guy a tip. And he's like, no, we got you. Marilyn was like, no, he let him have them. So I was like, okay, cool. So the guy grabbed the bags, he put them on a cart, and he ended up going up to the level where we were checking in. And then once he got the information on where our room was, he went ahead and proceeded to the room. You know, and so we already had walked to the elevator. We were on our way upstairs, and we got to our room. Within 2 minutes, homeboy was dinging the doorbell. We let him in. He came in and brought our bags and said, thank you very much. And he turned around and walked out. So there was no hesitation. There was like, no, well, how can I show you how to turn the TV on? Or can I show you how to turn the shower on? All that stally stuff that people do in order to try to get a tip. And so I looked at Marilyn and I said, he didn't want to tip and she says, no, people here are paid very well, and they work within the realm of what their job is in customer service. And so they don't, the tipping is not the culture here at all, and throughout Europe. And I was like, oh, so that makes sense why people get mad when they have like a big party and at a restaurant and there's Europeans that come through and they don't leave a tip. It's not part of the culture, because when you go overseas to Europe, you know, it is not expected at all. Everybody does their job and they go above and beyond to make sure that you're okay, and they don't expect to get compensated in return. And so there were many examples of this happening while we were there. And I got to the point where we even went to, we got a taxi ride. The guy, you know, I think it was like, how you doing? What's happening? I think it was like, essentially like $18 or something. And Marilyn gave him 20 euros. So it was 18 euros. Marilyn gave him 20. Homeboy went and got the change to give back to us, you know. And when we went to the restaurant, man, we went to this Indian restaurant. We had some incredible food there. And we ate, and they were so kind and so generous and taking the time to make sure we had a wonderful experience. And in the end, they brought the check to us, and there was no tip, there was no spot to drop it, none of that kind of stuff. And so we were like, well, I should say, I was like, man, I can't believe this. And so as we traveled through Europe, I was like, wow, folks over here do what they're supposed to do. They get, so this is the thing. In Europe, the expectation is that, you know, folks get fairly compensated. I think their work week is like 35 hours a week. And forget they get like mandatory, like 6 weeks of vacation, and a lot of stuff shuts down. You know, so there's a whole different spirit of leisure that takes place over there that is different than from here. And in exchange for that, folks do their job. They don't expect to have additional compensation, just because. And it really was a breath of fresh air. And everywhere we went through the country, all the interactions that we had, whether it was at a boulangerie or if we were getting, ice cream or gelato or whatever it might have been, no one anywhere expected us to leave them a tip. So when I left the continent of Europe and headed back, I was at the point where I was just like, man, I ain't tipping nobody no more. And so what I did was I said, you know what? I actually went into my phone and created a policy. And the policy is my tipping policy. So pretty much anything that I do when I deal with somebody in a walk-up restaurant, I don't tip, And like, for example, if I went to McDonald's, they spin the machine around, they ask for a tip, I'd hit no. I go and find it on the menu, hit no tip, and then turn around and spin it back. And then, what I found is that a lot of times in the US, these extra tips, I've even talked to some of the people as well. They don't go to the employees. The ownership gets it, or they might do a partial push down to some of the employees. And so I've never had anybody that was an employee mad dog me or give me some kind of a crazy stare down because I hit the no tip button. So it's just wild to actually realize. And so what I've done now is, see, before I used to always give like a mandatory 18% tip if I got an Uber, right? And if somebody actually got my bags, I would give them like 20 or 22%. So if somebody made me load my own bags in the car, I do 18%. So what I do now, I've gone into the Uber app and I have an automatic 10% tip. That's fair. Somebody is getting me out of a bind, or getting me from point A to point B, that's the least I can do. Look, there's a ton of folks out here at the river. So what I do now is when I have an Uber, I have it built into the app where I leave an automatic 10% tip. And I don't care if we talk, if we have a great time, if they get my bags or don't, I do an automatic tip. When I go to a restaurant, I only give 18%, and I only base it on the subtotal and not the amount with the tax. And if there's some unusual circumstance where, somebody is, hustling and doing real well, I'll add a dollar amount on top of that. We recently had went to, where we go? We went to Cheesecake Factory last time we went, and sister girl that was there, she's in the same profession as Amber, and she was talking about acting and all that. So I think I gave her like an extra 20 bucks on top of like the regular 18%. So I do have a heart. I do those kind of things, occasionally. So all good. And if I go someplace like I said, Starbucks or McDonald's or whatever, any of those kind of places, I just hit the no tip amount and I'm good to go. And I'll tell you, I think when we got back from Paris, I think at that point, I had there was a battery in my back and I was just empowered. And we ended up going, because that's what happened. We went to Paris, then we came back and we went to Seattle because we were going on a cruise, and I was going to propose to Marilyn at the time, which is what I did. So when we were there, we went to the, what is it called? The Starbucks Prime, or it's the Super Starbucks. I forget what they're called, but they're the elite where they're huge and they've got multiple floors, and I think it's a Starbucks roastery is what it is. And we had walked in there and I ordered, I think it was a cookie or something, or pastry. And it was like $6 or $7. The guy, said, hey, $6 or $7. And then he turned around and he spun the machine around to me And of course it said, 25% tip, 30% tip, 50% tip like they always do. And then the last option was more for a custom tip. So I went over to the more screen and I hit 0. And then I hit enter. And I took and spun that thing back around, And so what'd the guy do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He didn't even care. He didn't bat an eye. He didn't flinch. And so that's what I do now when it comes down to tipping. I just don't tip, except if it's like a restaurant or meal. And so that's one of the things I really liked about going on Virgin, was that everything was all inclusive and you weren't getting nickeled and dimed and robbed and, for each individual transaction. It felt like you had, fake camaraderie from, the staff of the ship, where they're giving you like their sad story, and just so that you can feel obligated to give them, tip at the end of the thing. So on Virgin, wasn't like that at all. Everybody was just as friendly and as thorough as you would expect if you went to Europe. And like I said, as we traveled all through Europe for our honeymoon, we went to Germany, we went to France, we went to United Kingdom, UK, London. Where else did we go? We went to Monaco, we went to Italy. All the places that we went to, except for Monaco, nobody expected a tip for anything at all, no matter what type of restaurant it was. There was no tip that was on the menu. But when we went to Monaco, that's a whole different story over there. Those guys had on there a tip, and I just did, I think I had Marilyn put the minimum amount or whatever it was. No, actually I think I did. Yeah, and so we did that, and I just did like the standard 18%. But I talked about them for like the rest of the trip, how, they are at that level. So yeah, that's where I am with my tipping. And I'd be interested to see where you guys are and how you guys feel. And as we traveled, all over the world, when we went to Thailand and we went to other places, was there tipping in Dubai? I don't remember. I don't remember if there was or not, because a lot of stuff we did was covered, but, I have no problem now anywhere I go, keeping things to those basic rules. So that's it. That's all I got to say about tips. So let's talk about the next topic. Folks ask me all the time when we travel, they say, hey, I don't mind traveling. I would love to travel, but I don't want to have to deal with racism. So the question is, as I've traveled through Canada, we've been through 3 different areas there. I've traveled through Europe. I think we have done, 5 or 6 countries. Been through West Africa, Thailand also as well, traveling through the US. How much racism have I experienced? And also even, being on, cruise ships and going to, places like Aruba or Curacao or, throughout the Caribbean, Jamaica, Grand Cayman, all those different places that we've been through, all through Alaska. How much have I experienced? And to be honest with you guys, I haven't experienced any at all. And I'm not trying to say that there are areas of the world or country that has, of these individual countries, that has an issue or problem with those. Here, let me just make sure I get through this. Yeah, so like I said, I haven't experienced any overt or covert at all. I'm not to say that folks in these areas are not, or they are. I haven't experienced anything to my face. And so I'll tell you what.
They're not gonna be sold out of bags.
When you take a look at me, I'm a big dude, and no matter where I go in this world or this country, I always get big dude treatment. And so people acknowledge me, they acknowledge my size, they say, what's up? They say, how you doing? what's up, big bro? You know, I get the love everywhere I go. And so all the areas of the world that I've traveled to, the only place that I have not gotten that treatment was Paris, France. And so Paris, France, when I went there, I was like, you know what, I love being here. I think I walked like 50 or 60 miles around the city to get a good feel for it. And I'll tell you, whether it's a big person or a small person there, they don't care. They would walk right through me if I didn't move. And so normally what happens is when I'm going someplace, people will get out of my way and then they will acknowledge me and all that. And so the thing that I've noticed through Europe is, you know, folks would acknowledge me, other folks wouldn't acknowledge me at all. And I kept my dark sunglasses on all the time. So I can always tell that people saw me and they noticed me and they would look at me and all that. And even when I was like on some of the trains and stuff, they have a really big migration going on all through Europe right now, especially as you get closer to the Mediterranean Sea. You're gonna see a lot of migrants that are moving through the areas and stuff. And I saw a lot of my African brothers from the continent, and for the most part, I didn't get much in the way of direct looks or acknowledgement, but when I had my glasses on, especially when I was on the train and stuff, I saw everybody. They would be looking at me and checking me out, and they would be talking and looking back towards me or talking to the person that's close to them and, you know, saying some words or whatever. I don't really care about that type of stuff at all. Like I said, I'm used to it and I expect it. But overt and covert to my face, or being kind of on a soft way, I never experienced anything at all. So let me get up this hill. See folks, they would look at me, you know, some folks would acknowledge me, other ones wouldn't, you know, all good, you know. And so yeah, it does exist, but now to be honest with you, I'm self-employed. I operate under a whole different set of circumstances than a lot of people do. And so I only deal with folks typically, especially with business, that want to deal with me and they already know who I am ahead of time. So when I have interactions with clients, you know, I've got clients of every nationality, nothing but love from everybody, you know, and I return the love back to everybody also as well. You know, so some people, and so even when I'm out and about, if I am out shopping or doing something, I always get love, I always get acknowledgement. And I'll tell you, when I went and spent time in Texas, Texas is a different beast. I would not get acknowledged at all when I was there, even eye contact or what's up. But I know in Texas, there's a whole different vibe and stuff. So I never got any bad treatment or anything like that, or felt like somebody was, you know, singling me out. But it was very similar to the treatment I got when I was in Paris. So yeah, all good. Yeah, so that's all I got to pretty much say about that. You know, each person has to, you know, decide what's important to them and what's not. And if you do feel like somebody is discriminating against you or they're treating you in a racist way, you have no obligation to spend your money with them and to help them stay alive. And so the best thing you can do in those situations is take your money and go someplace else and at least expect a certain minimal amount of treatment. So like I said, there's a certain amount of treatment that I get all the time when I travel, and even when I'm here in the States, you know, domestically. And so in that sense, I haven't experienced anything, you know, kind of on that spectrum at all that I can say is kind of racism while traveling. So traveling while black. So I encourage you guys, if it's something that's slowing you down and keeping you from exploring things internationally, you know, hey, you'll be surprised. We Americans are loved and respected, you know, all over this world. Don't let what you think you have heard, you know, taint your ability to move around and travel. You know, so yeah, that's up with that. Racism while traveling, you know, hey, I get it. You know, I'm not trying to, you know, discount anybody's experience. And I'd like to tell you, I have experienced enough in my life to know whether I've worked for somebody or just been around or in a grocery store or whatever it might be, you know, where I can honestly tell you that it does exist. And so don't let this in any kind of way make me seem like I'm trying to, you know, erase a major global issue. It does exist. All I'm talking about, just in this sense of, you know, me traveling and what I've experienced, I haven't experienced anything directly to my face. Last topic here, and I say this all the time, I am the best of what was left. And so what does that mean? So, you know, you know, I tell Marilyn all the time, I'm like, baby, you are so lucky that you got me. Out of all the people that are available on this planet to date and potentially, you know, get involved with and maybe one day get married to, you got so lucky because, you know, I am the best of what is left. And so what does that mean? That just means I am not perfect at all. And, you know, and I don't think most people are. So if you're out here trying to navigate this dating game, it's like, how do you ultimately end up sorting through all the trash to find somebody that would potentially be qualified enough, that would actually like you as much as you like them? That way you can kind of move forward and, you know, one day maybe get into a relationship. And I'll tell you, to be honest with you, you know, this kind of reminds me of, you know, I know all of us have done this before, where you need to go to the grocery store and you got to get apples, you got to get bananas, and you end up going late at night, about an hour before closing, and you know in the morning when you go there, they got the apples stacked all the way up to the ceiling. And they're in a nice little pyramid. All that's really, really cool. And during the day, everybody has a lot of choices on which apples to pick. And so you figure by the end of the day, the last few apples that are left, they are the worst that was available of that whole big pile. And so from this big pile of bad apples or bad bananas that's left over, how do you choose one that's not bruised up too bad, that's not soft on one side and, you know, about ready to ripe and fall apart in the next few hours after you get it home, or it's not infested with, you know, bugs and gnats? You turn around and bring that stuff back home. You know, how do you do it? And so sometimes you have to look at what's available and try to say, well, out of these 6 apples that are left, I need 2. You know, which one of these 2 are the best? And what do? You do your due diligence. You look at all 6 apples and you examine them closely and you try to determine, you know, which ones are the obvious set asides. So maybe out of the 6 apples, there are 3, after you touch them, you feel that they're bruised and soft. You set those aside completely. But now you got 3 apples left. And so what do? You go back and you examine again and examine again. You realize that one's got a pretty big defect on it. So you set it aside, and now you have 2 apples left. And between the 2 apples, they're almost identical and similar. They're not perfect, but they are at the point where you're like, you know what? If I go ahead and get these 2 apples and take them home and put them in the refrigerator, you know, everything will be okay. You know, so that's what I'm saying. That is the best of what's left. That's the simple analogy. And so when you're out here, I think your best chances of finding a good mate is when you're young. And so under 30, you know, you might be in college. They might be in college also as well. And so I know a lot of people are into, you know, and I'll tell you, this is a lot different for the guys than it is for the girls, you know. So guys could play the field and mess around and keep things going. And at some point, you know, 45 or 50, they want to turn around and make it happen. You know, they can turn around and, you know, marry down if they want to. You know, they can marry up or they can marry the same. You know, so there's a little bit more flexibility that men have. You know, if ladies, oftentimes they want to have children. Oftentimes there's technology and all that stuff now. But sometimes there's biological limits that you have to kind of be aware of. And so if you're experiencing a really good pool of potential candidates and you might be a little bit too picky at that point, at some point down the road, you'll find out one by one, all these guys will end up in a long-term relationship. The next thing you know, they're getting married and they're having kids. And so as you go on, and it's the same thing that happens for men. You know, as we get older, you know, folks in our same age pool, the ladies, you know, they get swiped up also too and picked up. It happens on both sides of the equation, you know, all good. And so, you know, what I'm trying to say here is you just have to really figure out what it is that you want in life, and just realize that the things that you decide to do today, that even though you feel strongly about them, you are 100% sure that this is how you want to live the rest of your life. In as little as a year or two, all that stuff can change, you know. And so I see on TikTok all the time, there's a ton of ladies, you know, that are on there, and this is really who this is directed to. There's a ton of ladies all the time that, you know, they decided that they wanted to, you know, live a little bit more independent life and, you know, hang out with the sisters and the girlfriends and travel and all that. But a lot of times what ends up happening is at some point something changes and they wish that they had found and locked things down with a guy, you know, earlier on in their life. And then they say, you know, where are all the good men at, you know, blah, 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 you know. And so that's what I'm trying to get to here. So now if you're at the point where you're kind of like, well, where are all the good guys at and where'd they go? You know, I tell you, all the time when I've become single in my life many times, and I found that as I became single and available, that once word got out on the street that I had everybody running after me trying to get in a relationship. And I'll tell you, you know, it doesn't take, I am a person that meets all the basic characteristics. You know, brother's educated, got my own business, and, you know, I'm responsible, and, you know, I'm do things in the community to try to help other people. You know, all the basic stuff that people really like. And I'm tall and, you know, fairly decent looking, you know, all that basic stuff, you know. And so whenever word would get out when I was available, I would have a lot of folks come by and, you know, do the classic, you know, hey, big head, what's going on with you? What's up with you these days, you know? And a lot of people pushing and shooting their shot. All good, you know, and like I said, I could only save one person in this world. And, you know, a lot of times what I would do is, you know, and many times when it would happen, I would become available, and I would tell folks as soon as they found out that I was single, I'm like, hey, look, do not tell anybody. This is top secret, because I don't want to have to deal with the smoke, you know. And I think last time I was really single, I went ahead and set up a Facebook dating profile. Really easy to do. All you had to do was just press a couple buttons and you had a profile. You could take pictures. And I'll tell you, when I did that, to be honest with you, I probably got at 20 to 30 people a day that were reaching out to me. There were young ladies, people that were my same age, people that were older, and a lot of people would message me. And the thing about me is, I'm very public. If you want to see what I'm up to or what I've been doing and what my life's all about, all you got to do is drop AndreReese.Biz or Andre Reese or my hashtag or my government name and Google, and you're going to find out all kinds of stuff about me, you know, all good, you know. And so people would always be like, well, why aren't you in a relationship? And there's always 25 questions and all that. And like I said, I got tired of the stuff, so I would just eventually I ended up taking my profile down and keeping it quiet. And so how does a really good guy, you know, find somebody out here in this world? And this is what the game is for you all you ladies. So how you can find the best of what's left. You have to keep yourself in a condition that you're ready to go. You never know when somebody that's of real good quality will enter your airspace, and they will evaluate you and try to determine, based upon what you got on social media, how you carry yourself, you know, tattoos that you might have, or hairstyles, or those kind of things. It'll make, you know, a number of different obvious assumptions about you. Then they'll decide to keep it going and keep it going, you know. And so so you never know oftentimes when this is going to happen. And I tell you, when I was out in this world, I would run into people everywhere, and I'd always make a quick evaluation of them and be like, nope. So you have to, you know, have yourself together at all times and be ready to go. So if you are caught up in other relationships, or you got some sneaky links or those kind of things, a good guy is going to be able to sense that stuff, and that might keep you from your blessing. All good. These kind of things ultimately happen, you know. And so how do you make yourself available? The main thing to do is keep a decent profile and keep yourself open and available. Post something on Facebook or Instagram occasionally to let somebody know, you know, the kind of things you're into and what you do. Not too much, you know. Keep the thirst traps to the minimum. Keep the duck lips, you know, to 0, you know, that type of stuff. And present yourself as a really good package, you know. And and when I was at our wedding, I told everybody the story about me being the best of what was left. And there's a lot of ladies that were there that would love to get in relationships. And I told them, I said, you know what? You have to, you know, the way Marilyn found me, we found each other. I was Marilyn's tax guy for several years. And when I first met her as a client, I always go to every client I have and friend them on Facebook. I take a look at who they are and what they're up to. This is guys or girls, doesn't make a difference. And when I looked at her profile when she became a client, I was like, oh wow, she travels a lot. You know, she does cool things. She's got friends and she's always smiling. And so I wasn't at that time trying to figure out how to get in a relationship with her, but that's what my initial assessment was. And then when it got to the point where we first started really talking, I went back to her Facebook page and went back to the very beginning and looked at everything that she did and who was liking her stuff and all that. And I was like, wow, she is definitely free and available, you know. And so these are the things that you have to do. So, you know, if you're going to find a really good guy these days, you know, most likely he's coming back onto the market after being in a relationship that failed or whatever, and he needs some time to get himself together and get to the gym and clear his mind and decide if this is what he wants to continue to do. But when he gets to the point where he's there, you know, you don't have a lot of opportunity. So the best thing you can do is be friends with folks and be somebody that people enjoy being around. You know, and so you might one day, you know, end up dating a guy that delivers packages to your house. You know, he got out of a relationship, whatever. You know, you might end up, you know, dating somebody that works at the hospital. You might end up dating somebody that, you know, works at the law firm where you've got some legal advice from before in the past. You never know where you will find that guy. But the most important thing to do is always be happy, always be friendly, and those kind of things leave a really, really good impression. So when a good guy decides that he wants to turn around and, you know, make a move and go back and circle the wagons, you know, those kind of things are what really leaves an impression on people. You know, so like I said, I am the best of what was left out there. I was the bruised apple and all that. But, you know, me and Marilyn, we get along incredibly well. We have a great time together, and she's happy that we're in this relationship. I'm happy that we're in this relationship. We're having a ton of fun together. And I learned a lot in my life from the ups and the downs, and been able to convert that into strategies to be able to have a better life. And I found who I am, and I know what makes me happy and what brings me joy. And so those are the kind of things that you have to kind of go through as well. You know, so if you're going to be single and try to keep yourself free and clear. So if something ever comes along, you're available, and you don't let your blessing get away from you. But like I said, it is a very competitive market out here, and there's nothing wrong with you finding the best of what was left also as well, because you'd be surprised. You know, I've gone many, many times over here to Whole Foods to get a watermelon, and there's only 3 left, and I pick the best of the 3 that are there, and the watermelon that I end up getting based upon my testing and procedures is like one of the best ones I've ever had before in my life. You know, so don't give up hope, you know, ladies, and you know, be aware that there are other things out here in life that are the best of what was left. All you got to do is put in some time, energy, and effort, and make yourself available, and you'll be surprised at what may turn your way when you least expect it. So that's it, guys. I got nothing else to say. I think I'm out of time, and I apologize for the choppiness of this video, you know, but it's all good. But appreciate you guys, and I'll be back tomorrow on my bike, and hopefully we'll be talking about some new topics. Take care, guys. In my life. Oh, shit. Okay, my brother fell. This is black ice. Okay. All right, I'm okay. All systems check. All right, I'm good. So let me just penguin it.